Open to the public. Agenda item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies? No apologies. Agenda item 2, chairperson's business. Can I remind members of the effective questioning technique session that has been organised for the 24th of February for the second part of the committee meeting that day. Members should make every effort to attend that, please. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting 3rd of February 2015. Can I refer members to the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of February 2015 at pages 6 to 10. Are members content that the draft minutes are accurate? Okay, so I will sign. Agenda item 4, Matters Rising. Confirm members to Matters Rising at page 13 to 23. We have a letter from Philip Hogan, Commissioner, on the dairy crisis. And if any of you have read that letter, he certainly is not looking at any of the measures that we had proposed. So he certainly has ruled out a number of measures that we thought may be helpful. Are members content to note content action the Matters Rising is suggested index sheet at page 12. Okay. Agenda item 5, oral briefing. We have Dard Reservoirs Bill proposed amendment on a number of supervised visits. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at page 25 to 32 and papers from the department at page 33 to 55. Additional papers have been tabled. Can I welcome David Porter, grade 6, and Kieran Brazier, grade 7. I ask you to take up to 10 minutes to address the committee, and following the briefing, we'll seek members' questions. You're very welcome. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and as ever, thank you for inviting us to the committee to debate these final stages of the reservoir bill. What I want to do is really two things. One, I'm going to give you a brief update on two things. One is the numbers of reservoirs, because we've been doing a review. And secondly, to give you a brief update on the audit that you'd asked for. And then secondly, Kieran's going to take over and just talk us through the amendment to the bill as requested. So the review, the numbers at this minute in time, if I can refresh your memory, we started with probably identifying about 180-ish reservoirs at the very, very early stages. By the time we got to public consultation, we had refined that to a number of 156, and that was the number that I came to the committee and talked about, 156 reservoirs which were going to be subject to future legislation. As we refined the definition, whenever we were going through the scrutiny phases, we got that number down to about 150 or 151. Again, that was a number that's probably familiar with you and in your minds, because we've mentioned that before. What we've done since is we have continued to look at that to see what other reservoirs at this stage can we get out, because we recognise that this is a burden on people. And in some cases an unwelcome burden, and if at this early stage we can give people good news that they're not going to be subject to the reservoir bill, that would be very helpful, so that they don't have to start to employ engineers and the cost and giving us evidence. So the good news is that we have managed to get the 151 down to 137, and of that reduction, 10 of those are privately owned, and 3 of those are local councils. And what we intend to do, because this is literally a piece of work which has just been completed in the last number of days, we intend to write out to those people and tell them, we know we invited you to Reservoir Bill consultation sessions, we told you about it, we've had various discussions, what the good news is, and set out the reason why they won't be subject to. Most of them have been excluded because we've gone in and done some detailed work to determine the actual size of the impoundment. Because if you recall, we're talking about 10,000 cubic metres of water which could escape. And so what we looked at was the ones which were too small, but were just in the borderline, that if some further work could be done, they might have been in. So we did that work and made sure that we knew those were out. We also have a further piece of work on a further 21, which are sitting in that 7.5 to 12.5. which we are going to do some further work. So I think there's another number of that 21 which will also come out before the reservoir bill. So I think we're probably aiming for a figure, I would think probably about 130 reservoirs which will actually be subject to the legislation whenever it's enacted. So I think that hopefully will be welcome to the committee, and I suspect it will be very welcome to those people that own those reservoirs, because it means that we're really focusing in on those people who need to know the burden or know the detail of the bill and be subject to the burden of the legislation, and relieving those that don't need to be at this early stage. So that's an update on the numbers. On the audit, the committee had asked for a reservoir audit to be carried out, and the way that we have proposed to deal with that through the legislation is that we have amended the legislation so that there's a phase 1 and then the phase 2, and the phase 1 was to bring in the definitions and make it clear who's responsible and to require that initial assessment, and phase 2 then is the recurring elements of the bill. We had to do a business case. Last time we were here, we reported that it had been submitted to the economists and that we were at the final stages. We have cleared all those hurdles. We now have an approved business case, and very shortly we will be writing out to the reservoir owners, explaining the scheme and making that available to them. So that will start off that process, and that then will inform a report which can be brought back to the Assembly or to the committee, and also then will inform us about the commencement, if and when phase 2 then of the bill has to be commenced. So that's a little bit of an update on numbers and the work we've done to reduce those which are subject to the legislation, and an update on the audit. And I'll now ask Kieran to give you an update on the amendment.
Okay. Good afternoon, Committee and Chair. I just wanted to start by going back a wee bit and setting the context of all of this, and forgive me if the clerk has just recently briefed you on this, but I think it's worth going over again. The bill, as introduced, sets out a frequency and number of visits by supervising engineers, and this was always an issue of contention for the committee. But the bill, as introduced, advises that a high consequence reservoir would receive a visit at least 2 times in a 12-month period, and a medium consequence at least once in every 12-month period. That was debated long and hard during the committee stage, and the department agreed that it would bring forward a proposed amendment. We reduced that. The proposed amendment was to reduce that to a high consequence to 1 every 12 months and medium consequence to 1 every 24 months. The committee wasn't content with that, and during the formal vote on clauses, it voted not content with that proposed amendment. The department brought forward subsequently a second proposed amendment which moved the number of visits out again to, for high consequence, it remained the same at once every 12 months. Medium consequence, it moved out to once every 36 months. In fairness to the committee noted that it was a bit too late for the formal voting stage, and that's the position that was recorded in the report to the Assembly from the committee. And that's where it sat until the committee's meeting on the 11th of November, when the committee considered this matter again and was deliberating over 5 options. It decided to ask the department to amend the bill to provide that the number of visits by a supervising engineer is set by regulations and subject to draft affirmative procedure. The department considered that request and has subsequently agreed to it, and has put forward a proposed amendment which I'm going to take you through now, and which is set out in the department's letter to the committee dated the 2nd of February. So, how does that work? The proposed amendment does a number of things. First of all, it removes from the face of the bill, at clause 25(2)(k), any reference to the number and frequency of visits by a supervising engineer. And it also amends clause 33(4)(i). It removes that the reference to those visits from that clause as well, and amends it slightly. So those were the two main clauses that were were bone of contention. So from the face of the bill has been removed the specific reference to the minimum number of visits by a supervising engineer, and that's entirely consistent with the request that was made by the committee to the department. Secondly, it introduces a new clause, 25A, which sets out and makes provision for the making of the regulations regarding the frequency of visits to a medium and high consequence reservoir. The new clause 25A also allows for an appeal by a reservoir manager against any decision that the department may make with regard to the standard or the acceptable standard of a reservoir. And then it does a number of other things. It makes reference in clause 103A and schedule 3, which deals with the appeals to the Water Appeals Commission. It makes reference to new clause 25A in those parts of the bill. But importantly, it also includes reference to 25A in clause 1173, and that lists those regulations and makes sure that the regulations, when brought forward, will be through draft affirmative procedure. And therefore, the committee will be given an opportunity to consider the regulations, the draft regulations, before they're put before the Assembly and to challenge them. It also makes reference to the new clause 25A in clause 120, and that's the clause that introduces the bill in two phases. So it makes sure that that clause is in the second phase of the bill, rather supervising visits come in the second phase of the bill. So, it makes sure that that's all done. Those are the technical aspects of the proposed amendment. How this will work is pretty straightforward. Every medium and high consequence reservoir will commence with the standard number and frequency of visits, and that will reflect the position that the department put forward as its final proposed amendment, and that is a high consequence reservoir would receive a visit at least once every 12 months, and a medium consequence reservoir once every 36 months. And again, that's entirely consistent with the committee's request to the department. That position will be reviewed when the department is satisfied that the reservoir is in good condition. And how it will do that is, if it receives an inspection, there's a number of ways it will do it. If we are in possession of an inspection report that says the reservoir has been inspected and there's no concerns around safety, that's one way that we'll review it. If we receive an inspection report and say there are works needed in the interest of safety, and then get a certificate to advise that those works have been done by the reservoir manager and therefore the reservoir is now safe, we will review that. Or if we get an annual statement from a supervising engineer to say all of the works are done and there's no issues around safety. So if we get formal information from inspecting engineers or supervising engineers, the department will review that frequency and number. Now, and we haven't yet decided how this will manifest itself, but the number and frequency will be reduced at that stage. So it will move out from at least once every 12 months for a high consequence. We imagine, we haven't, I want you to bear with me on this one, we haven't absolutely decided on this, but it may look like moving out from a high consequence at least once every 12 months to at least once every 24 months, for example. And for a medium consequence reservoir, move out from at least once every 36 months to once every 60 months, which is 5 years. That's our thinking at this point in time. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have on that.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. And can I first of all say welcome the fact that there's a number of smaller so-called reservoirs have been taken out of the equation, because that was a big concern for myself personally and many members on the committee. Can you tell me what the indicative timescale is for the introduction of the new regulations?
Yeah, yes. As I said earlier, once the bill is enacted, certain parts of the bill will be commenced first, and that's phase 1. The requirement to engage a supervising engineer will come in phase 2, and that will only be considered whenever the Assembly receives the audit on the condition and capital costs of fixing the reservoirs. We expect that report will be before the Assembly in July next year at the latest. But if we assume it's July next year, if the phase 2 of the bill is commenced after that, then we would imagine we would be bringing forward regulations in autumn 2016. Okay.
Can you talk us through the appeals process, please? How will a reservoir manager appeal a decision on frequency of visits?
Yeah. When the department receives information with regard to the condition of the reservoir, hopefully you won't have anything to appeal. If the reservoir is given a clean bill of health and safe, the department will readily amend and change the frequency and number of visits. But if he feels that if we decide not to, he will then appeal that to the Water Appeals Commission. The Water Appeals Commission is the independent body, and it will hear evidence from the reservoir manager and from the department, and it will make an independent decision that will hold good. So the department has no say over that once the appeal mechanism is engaged by the reservoir manager.
Okay. We have a couple of members wanting to ask questions. Oliver McMullen.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for your presentation. And I too welcome the taking out of the smaller reservoirs. I haven't a lot to ask you. Just one thing that still bugs me is that high definition and medium definition. If we fix the reservoir high definition up to standard, when can that be downgraded to medium definition? No, because I'm thinking way ahead of insurance, or there could be a block on planning something we call downstream. So I'd like to see something in there where that high definition could be downgraded to medium definition. And on the 24 months, I'd like to have seen that maybe 36 months. Maybe even up to the same, or whatever, up to 5-year one, it's 60 months, you know, but those is mine out of that there.
Okay, so there's a number of items there. You mentioned planning and then extending the time, and then between the high and the medium.
Yeah.
So planning is dealt with under PPS 15, and the new version has been accepted. It does not block development downstream of a reservoir, except for very, very specific types of uses. So it really sets out, it calls into question whether if you want to put critical infrastructure, for instance a power station, or if you wanted to put dwellings for vulnerable people, so an old people's home or a hospital or something like that. It questions whether that's the best use of it. You will not be blocked for development for dwelling houses downstream of a reservoir, because, as I've said a number of times, provided that a reservoir is inspected by a competent person, they are safe to live below. You know, a reservoir failure is a highly unlikely event. Our issue with reservoirs is if they are allowed to deteriorate and they do collapse or fail, the consequence of that failure because of the amount of water that they hold is so catastrophic. But the likelihood of that happening is remote, and is particularly remote if you have an inspection regime, if you have a competent person keeping an eye on it. So planning will not be blocked downstream of reservoirs or dwelling houses. So hopefully that will give you some comfort on that. In terms of extending the time scale, as Kieran has outlined, we have not firmed up our thinking on that. What Kieran has outlined is just our initial thoughts. We're happy enough through the process of developing the regulations to have that debate and possibly even to get some evidence to satisfy ourselves and the committee that what we are proposing is correct. But as Kieran as well as outlined, that's a number of months down the line. You know, it's into 2016 and we will have time to do that. The difference between high and a medium, high consequence is where we identify that there is a potential for a wall of water of a depth and velocity which could potentially cause death. And a medium consequence is where there's still, it's going to wet the area down below, but the depth and velocity, because as I said before, it's deep, fast-moving water that kills people. So shallow, slow-moving water, where we can model that and show that impacts on people's property, that's what gets you into the medium category in terms of impact. And then we can also, we've introduced through the more recent amendments that we've taken through how you can actually do works within the reservoir to change that position.
Okay.
Very quickly, Chair, can I just quickly, a couple of points following on from that there. On the likes of planning there, can we get a guarantee there'll be no charge for anybody wanting to find out from a high consequence reservoir in the area as to a certificate of competence for their application if it's asked for? Because you could be in agricultural ground where diversification for tourist need, hotel, hostel, you name it, that would come under vulnerable people, because we're talking about old people's homes and things like that there, if we're talking about public buildings. So if we need a certificate, there'll be no charge for that.
So there's no formal certificate. What we have to do through the bill is we have to produce a register, and there will be certain pieces of information on that register which a person who is compiling a planning application would seek to get access to. Now, they will not get all the information from the register because, as we've talked about before, there are vulnerabilities surrounding a reservoir. There's certain pieces of information that should not be put out into the public domain, but certainly presence of a reservoir, what category it's in, and whether it is compliant with the reservoir bill should be information that will be readily available through the planning process.
And what's the last thing is, Chair, what's a reservoir? What is the safe ground around a reservoir? What's the clear ground around a reservoir?
Okay.
That nothing can happen within.
Yeah. Well, it's not that nothing. So, as we all know, water flows downhill. So the area that we're concerned about is the area immediately downstream from a reservoir, and there is now very sophisticated modelling packages which can model what would happen in a breach. It can not only tell you the flooded area, but it can also tell you the depth and velocity. And so we will, as we're going through this process, we will be able to determine what depth and velocity are the triggers where we are concerned, and that's what takes into the high consequence category. And we will also then set a threshold below which we're not concerned about, and you'll be able to get access to that as well.
Okay. Ian.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for your presentation. I want to say there, that I think we've come a long way from the first time I've heard tell of a reservoir bill. I was wasn't very comfortable with the whole situation, but today there I feel there, that I'm in a better place with it, and I think we have a situation now where there's a more realistic look in the sense of every aspect of it. But I just want to ask you there, you say there there's 13 reservoirs has been taken off the list of 150. Could I ask you where they are at, right? Because there has been people, come to us, with, to talk about them, and I would just like to know if where those are, right? And could I ask there, that when you talk about downgrading 13, who took the decision that they should be downgraded? Are you talking about yourselves and the engineers within Rivers Agency? Mm-hmm. And the third point I want to make, and the final point, is that of the 21 that are left, the 21 that you're revisiting, if you like, how many of those are private?
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
And so, 3 questions there. Where, who decided, and then a wee bit of detail on the 2021. So I don't have details of what the 10 private ones are, but the 10 individuals will get a letter. I'm happy enough to, I'm not sure that we particularly want it in the public domain, but we're certainly happy enough to talk to you in private about where those are. The 3 that are councils, one is in Newtownards council area, one is in Lisburn, and one is in Belfast. And they'll also get a letter saying that we've done that work. Who decided? What we did within Rivers Agency was we have set up a group within Rivers Agency of a number of people. I think we pulled together 4 who collectively take the decision on this, because what we recognised is that there's a whole series of decisions to be taken in terms of impact designation, in terms of maybe hearing some of the informal appeals, and also in terms of deciding what is a reservoir and whether it meets a threshold. Rather than putting that burden on one individual, we pulled together a group of some engineers, some policy people, and some mapping and modelling people, so that collectively we can have a debate about what do we feel collectively is the right answer in that. So that's who decided. So it was a group within Rivers Agency. The 21, we're going to go through that same process with those. The difference with the 21 is we needed some further information on those because they were so close to that 10,000 threshold that what we actually need to do is send out a survey team to those to make sure that we have the height of the dam correct, that we have the size correct, because some of the assumptions that we made at the early stage, particularly whenever you're very close to that threshold, a small change in that could make a big difference and could actually knock some of those out. What we're going to do with that is actually we're going to commission that work externally. One, because we don't have the survey team employed within Rivers Agency, but 2, I think it also brings a level of independence as well to that work, that somebody can look at those 21, can give us the size information and the information that we require, and then that same panel that I mentioned earlier can review that. Of the 21, no, we don't have the details of the ownership of the 21. It's a different 21.
But I think, from memory, the vast majority of those are private. Yeah.
Okay.
Chair, thanks very much.
Okay, Cindy Anderson.
No, thank you, Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for presenting to us today. Some of my questions have been answered there, but you talk about the 21. You think you can get this all, David, right down to about approximately 130, starting off from what was the 180 or so?
Yeah.
But would that mean most of those 21 then been taken out?
Well, we're down
When
at
we talking, looking at those figures, you started off with about 130 or somewhere. What do you think, if those 21 had that extra work done on them, what do you think the final figure would be?
This is, I think it's probably in around 130.
Still only
It may well go down, because we're sitting at 137 at the minute.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly sure by looking at that 21 that we'll refine 7 out of it. Maybe we'll get 8, maybe we'll get 9, so we might get down below the 130.
More than that.
But I think it's in and around the 130 is our gut feeling on it, just by looking at the sizes of them. What we've tended to find with the work we've done is, whenever we do a little bit of refining work, it tends to reduce the size. It only enlarged the size on the ones which were very, very large. So some of the assumptions that we had at the minute for the small reservoirs worked quite well, and it didn't overestimate the size of them. So whenever we refined them, it brought it down a little bit. Not very many of them. In fact, I can't think of any that the small reservoirs actually got bigger whenever we refined it. So off the 21, I'm being cautious by saying 8 or 9. It might be a little bit more than that, but I don't want to oversell it. I'm quite happy whenever we finish that work, we can write to you and just give you an update on that, if that would be helpful.
Do we have any, it has been mentioned before, are there any reservoirs where the ownership is unclear, still unclear?
2.
We still have 2?
Yeah, we've got 2.
So what do we do with those?
Well, we hope to find the owners. We're still.
And if you don't?
No, well, there's a simple. There's a provision within the bill for the department to step in.
Right.
Now, to be very clear, it's to carry out measures in the interest of public safety. So we would, on those 2, commission an inspection report, and if there are matters in the interest of public safety, we would have emergency powers to step in to deal with those. So that case is dealt with within the...
Are those 2 high consequence or medium consequence, do we know?
Both are high.
Both are high?
Yes.
So it's quite in our interest to find out who owns them, or
Yes.
to
Yes.
ensure that if we don't find who owns them, to
Yes.
get that
Yeah.
checks, those tests are carried out.
At the moment, it's informal, you know, the way we're looking at this, but when we have the reservoirs bill made and people are required to register the reservoirs, if those reservoirs haven't been registered, and they might register them, but if they're not, then they will, at least the department will have the powers to go seeking, formally seeking the owners of the reservoirs. At the minute, it's very informal, and we've been successful in getting all but 2, but those are the 2 that are just standing out, and we can't put our finger on who owns them.
Would the department have a role, or would the new councils have a role working with the department, every area they're in?
Well, that would be helpful, yes, if that was the case, but the councils wouldn't have the power
No.
to force the department, the provisions of the bill lies
But
with
they
the
would surely be
department.
very interested if something was to go wrong.
Yes.
Within their
yes,
area.
absolutely. The more help we can get, the better.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we'll very much welcome that. But a council, I'm just making the distinction between the powers in the bill that rest with the department in terms of requiring a reservoir manager to register the reservoir with the department, and those powers wouldn't rest with the local council.
But would you consult with those councils in that area at any time?
Yes.
You would
Yes,
Anybody?
absolutely.
But to be clear, there's no requirement on a council to go in,
No.
because at an
No.
early stage there was a concern, particularly with councils, that what we were trying to do was to foist orphaned reservoirs, as they were termed at a very early stage.
What I'm trying to get at
onto
here,
the
if there was an
councils.
area or a council area that has a high consequential reservoir,
Yes.
that could have a detrimental effect to the area.
Yes.
It's certainly something that the department should be being in touch with them to
absolutely.
work with them.
It's a good suggestion,
who-
thanks.
Who pays for it is another issue.
Yes.
I'm not suggesting that ratepayers pay for it, but what I'm saying is it certainly would be very much in the interest of everyone to get everyone on board here.
Yes.
Well, the powers are there for the department to step in and carry out any works that are required, and just to be clear, in the interest of public safety, so those things that need immediate attention. And the department, because it has the powers then, would cover that cost, hold that cost until such times as an owner was found, or at some point just accept that's on.
Maybe I'll find the owners.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Lou Byrne.
Thanks, John. I welcome the update, and I'm glad that you've managed to, by survey, refine the number of potentially viable water reservoirs that would be within the bill. In relation to the fact that Belfast, Ars and Lisburn are 3 councils that have had reservoirs that are no longer within the category, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Can I ask you about that other one that did cause some concern back at the end of last year, the Camlock Lake?
Yep.
Has its ownership been clearly established yet, or what's the situation?
Okay, well, as I reported before, the ownership of Camlock Lake are all deceased, and the trustees of that waterworks, those posts after the people deceased, there was nobody that took up those positions. However, under the reservoir bill, it is very clear that if a water company removes water from a reservoir, that they will be a reservoir manager. And it also makes it very clear that other people that have a responsibility for a reservoir will be a reservoir manager as well. So that has enabled us to identify that Northern Ireland Water have a responsibility, and also that Newry and Mourne District Council have a responsibility. And whenever we spoke at the last time, there was a concern about Camlock, and to be fair to those 2 organisations, they have managed that situation very well. They have drawn down the water. They have put in works to ensure that that reservoir does not fail, because they recognise, both of them, they recognise their future responsibilities on the reservoir bill and their current liabilities in terms of the activities that they carry out in that. In terms of the longer term ownership, there continues to be a discussion between Northern Ireland Water, Newry and Mourne, and we are also involved in that discussion as well. So that has not been finalised, but that did not stop any action being taken to alleviate the potential failure of that reservoir.
Chairman, would you people be satisfied that the necessary remedial action has been done to safeguard current operation there?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't praise them high enough, both Newry Mourne and Northern Ireland Water, for the action that they took. However, I would be concerned that if that, because those are two public bodies, that they were, they understood their liabilities and they understood their responsibility. If that had been a privately owned reservoir or unknown, or if we didn't have a public body involved with that, we might not have got the same level of cooperation, which really reinforces the need for the reservoir bill, because in the situation of an imminent failure, we need people to take action, and that's what the reservoir bill does. It requires people to take action, not just during the emergency, but in the run-up to that, and trying to alleviate that so that we don't get into the position that we faced in November with Camlock Lake.
Thanks. I welcome that, Chairman. And finally, in relation to some of the reservoirs that were owned by the third sector or used by the third sector, what is the status currently in relation to the Creggan water reservoir in Derry? Who is the owner there? Has that been refined yet or defined?
I think the evidence was given to the committee that is in the ownership of Creggan Country Park and that association, and they give evidence that that hasn't changed. We had informal discussions after they give evidence with them, because there are still some other users of that water, and there's still some other potential landowners that own land in and around the dam itself. And I understand that they were to have discussions with some other bodies. I haven't had an update on that one. We'll be interested to have a look at that one whenever it is actually registered, how many other names appear, but certainly from listening to the evidence, that they knew that they were responsible for that dam, but there may well be other people that should be enjoined in that as well.
Okay, Chairman, and I welcome the update in relation to clause 25A. I think it's good progress. Thanks.
Okay. Honourable Wheeler, come back in.
Just very quickly.
Very quickly, please.
Very quickly, you said that the council doesn't have to go out to inspect them, but would that not become part of the council's emergency plans? And also, councils now have the power of planning, that they would need to have a register within planning, building control, to let the applicants need. So, councils do have a big role to play in these things here, themselves.
Well, for clarification, what we were making very clear was that a council within the bill will not become responsible for the ownership or the maintenance of a structure. Because at a very early stage, there was a concern that if we couldn't find anybody to look after this, that it would default to the council.
No,
that is not within the bill.
I don't mean that there. I mean
within the planning.
And the emergency plan. Every council has an emergency plan and
Contingency.
Yeah.
contingency.
So there's two areas of planning that we need to deal with here. One's the emergency plan, and then one's the land use planning.
Yeah.
In terms of the emergency plan, we have made available to the council's information about reservoirs, and we continue to do that in terms of flooding. So I have no concerns about that, and Uri is a very good example. They were aware of the risks. They had flood inundation maps, and they have a very well developed flood emergency or flood plan for that reservoir. In terms of land use, you're correct. A planner today needs to know that there's a reservoir and has a flood inundation map in their system. Whenever that transfers over to the council and the council is taking that decision, they will have access to that same information.
Chair, I'm happy with 25A.
Okay. Thank you very much again for your presentation. And I'm going to ask you to go back to the public gallery, and we'll bring the committee through the amendments. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I advise members that we need to decide whether or not we are content with the amendments put forward today. For ease of reference, the proposed amendments can be found on pages 41 to 44. Okay, can members find those? Bring us through them. Okay, members. Are members content to accept the proposed amendment at clause 25A?
Yeah.
Great, okay. Are members content to accept the proposed amendment at clause 33(4)(I)?
It's consequential, is it right? So,
33(4)(I) is the one where the inspecting engineer can specify extra visits by the supervising engineer.
Clear on that?
agreed.
Great, okay.
Agreed, yep.
Members content to accept the proposed amendment at clause 103A on Schedule 3.
Agreed, yeah.
Okay, members? Great.
Agreed.
Members content to accept the consequential amendments at clause 117, 117.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Members content to accept the consequential amendments at clause 120.
Agreed.
Can I advise members that the accepted amendments will be reflected in the addendum to the committee report and will be provided in time for the consideration stage debate. Okay? All right.
Agreed.
Okay.
You're smiling.
Just glad to get that out of the way.
That's the easy bit done.
Sure, the spouses are more glad than we are.
Say their legs now.
Agenda item 6, we have an oral briefing from the Ulster Farmers Union on the pig industry. Refer members to the UFU press relief, page 57, and table briefing paper at page 3. Can I welcome Ivor Ferguson, Deputy President, Jonathan Cootie, Pork and Bacon Committee Chairman, and I think we have Roger Allen, Big Policy Officer. These are very welcome indeed. And we just asked you to take up to 10 minutes to give you a presentation on the industry and on the issues that are reflected in the industry at this moment. Okay?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for having us today to allow us to discuss our various issues that we're currently having with the pig industry. We do appreciate that. As you said, Ivor Ferguson is my name. I'm the Deputy President of the Ulster Farmers Union, and on my right here, Jonathan Cootie, who's the Chairman of the Pork and Bacon Committee, and Roger Allen on my left, who's the Policy Officer. Now, I do understand that you have been circulated with some of the main points that we'll have for discussion today, and I would just like to concentrate on some of the main issues rather than going over all the points that you already have.
Okay.
Now, just to give you a bit of a background to the market, the GB market, that's our main market, and we supply that with red tractor quality pigs, which is the standard on the used for our quality assurance scheme. And this GB market has been slipping over the summer months for a number of reasons. We have the Russian ban that we all know about, and whereas we don't sell so many pigs direct into Russia, but the main pig producing countries like Holland and Denmark do. And especially with a weaker euro, they look to the UK market to supply their excess product, which puts pressure on our market. We do understand that. And also, pigs thrive pretty well in mild weather. In this last few months, they have been thriving pretty well, which puts more pigs on the market, brings the market forward a bit. And now, these are all difficulties for us, and we understand that. But we've been well used with these over the years, and our main concern is this widening price differential between Northern Ireland and the UK mainland. That's our main concern. Now, in the past, this last year or two, most of the main pig producers in Northern Ireland, and there are three main marketing groups, they have always been linked to the pig price, mostly in the UK. We had a pig price reporting system put together by BPAX, and they are the body who looks after pigs in general as regards pricing and all in the UK. And we were linked to that, and by that I mean if the UK market, we had an agreement with processors where we're linked to that. What I mean is if the UK price fell a penny or two, we fell, and if it went up 3p, we went up 3p, and we were quite happy with that system. Now, up until about June or July last year, we always had a price differential, which we never were really very happy with. and it was always round, 6 to 8 pence at the most, and that was approximately £5 to £6 a pig. Now, the main processors in England weren't happy with this DAP reporting system that they had there. The DAP system means deadweight average pig price. Now, the reason they weren't happy with it was that if we take our standard pig, which we produce in Northern Ireland, they also had other pigs which were welfare-friendly pigs based on straw-bred systems, and they commanded a bit better price. And of course, organic pigs, they did, command a better price. So processors argued that that was kept the market price artificially high. So in the middle of last year, BPAX recognised this and they changed the system, and they took those higher welfare pigs and more expensive pigs out of the equation, and they give the new system the title called the standard pig price. We were quite happy with that, of course, and but processors saw an opportunity to break their contracts, which were word-of-mouth contracts, and ever since that time, our pig price has slipped progressively more than the price in England. So we're at the stage today where that pig differential is now 15 to 18p, which we find unacceptable. Now, this SPP price, which is the current price in England, it covers approximately 85 to 95,000 pigs a week. And most of those, that's an average price, so most of those farmers would receive their SPP price. For example, this week it's 139.9 pence. They would receive that price plus 2p of a bonus on top of that. That's the standard price for those pigs. Now, when you take grading and other things out of it, it usually ends up at maybe a penny less than that. So, and that would give them a price of an average price of about 139 to 40p. We currently have a price of 123 to 125 pence, which makes the differential of 15 to 17 or 18 pence. Now, the question we are asking processors is, why has this differential, or why has this margin increased from June, July up to now? We haven't got any satisfactory answers to that, and we're merely asking that question. And that's one of the things we hope today that you may take up for us and ask that question for us. We're just merely asking that question. The break-even point for pigs here in Northern Ireland at the moment would be around about 130 pence. So we believe we're under that, 5p beneath that. Now, one major concern we have is that we know the UK market is under pressure from imports for the reasons outlined, like the euro and the Russian ban. And BPAX tell us in England that over the next maybe 4 to 6 or 8 weeks, their price may fall back another 10 pence. Now, that has raised a lot of alarm bells for us as pig farmers. If that was passed directly back to us, which we have no reason to suggest it wouldn't be, that would bring our price down another 10 pence, which would leave us in a pretty bad situation. Now, the other thing I'd like to bring to your attention is we've been involved with the Food Strategy Board going for growth situation, and we were in the UFU, we were very supportive of this system, and we could see it as a room for expansion for us as pig farmers. And one of the things was explained to us that there was certainly going to be a more joined-up approach and more transparency in the marketplace between retailers and processors and farmers, and we look forward to that. And we could see, because our sow numbers have been down in Northern Ireland for a few years, we could see some expansion here for our farms. But unfortunately, the way the processors have treated us with their pricing policy in this last 3 months has taken a lot of that trust away. So I can't see anything for us in the Going for Growth campaign as we have it at the moment. One other thing I'd just like to mention to you is that as well as speaking to yourself, Mr. Chairman, we did write to our Minister, and we've got a reply back to it. I'll not read it all, but I just wanted to read one paragraph in it. Our Minister says, "I am aware of the downward trend in the price paid for finished pigs and that the difference between the price paid for pigs in Britain and in the north of Ireland has grown, with local processors dropping their prices by a greater degree than the drop in the standard pig price. However, the price farmers receive for their produce is a commercial matter, and my department has no remit to intervene. And I'd have to say that as pig producers, we are very disappointed with that response from our request to have a look into this widening differential. So, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That's all I'd like to say at the moment, but we're very glad to take some questions or any questions you may have.
Okay, and certainly you're welcome with us, and we have concerns for your industry this time. In your, I'm sure you have spoken to processors in recent times. Have they given any explanation as to why the large differential in price between here and the mainland?
Well, we have asked the question, certainly, and 10 days ago at the Northern Ireland Pork and Bacon Forum, we did ask that question. We get various replies from processors from where they say there isn't really a differential. If we had another thing, they tell us that if we could get the export market to China, that would be a big help. But, I mean, the point we would raise here is that back in June, there was no export market to China at that time, and the differential was 68p, and it's not really an answer to us for why it is big. One thing, I did ask Seamus Carr of the Carroll Pig Group to come and speak to us at the Pork and Bacon Committee and explain why this differential is where it is. And he said he would come arrange a date for this Thursday, but it doesn't suit him now, but he has sent alternative dates, so maybe he will offer us an explanation as to why that is, maybe in the next couple of weeks. But at the moment, we haven't had any satisfactory explanation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I do see where you say that originally the 68p meant 5 to 6 pound a pig, so therefore the 15 to 18 pence is something in the region of double that, 12 or 13 pound a pig, is that right?
That's exactly right, yes.
Yeah. Have you had any meetings with DARD headquarters now, DARD staff, in relation to this department other than the Minister? You haven't had any meetings with?
No, we just wrote to the Minister on the differential.
That's okay. Okay. Certainly, we as a committee will look at what we can do to assist, and I do believe that pressure on the processors to almost embarrass them into certain situations. It does seem very strange that there should be such a massive differential. Joe Byrne.
Chairman, welcome the presentation. It's good to hear from first-hand knowledge of pig farmers what the situation is. In terms of the processors here, you have 3 processor or producer groups, is that right, Eivor?
Yes, there's 3 main producer groups plus then a number of sizable individual producers, yeah.
And can I ask, do the members of the producer groups have a contractual price ongoing with the processors, or does it vary according to the management of the local pig plant?
It varies with the management of the local pig plants, but having said that, we all have word-of-mouth contracts with processors, and up until June that worked well, but once the DAP situation changed, they had an opportunity to break those contracts. So now we don't have any contracts with them. We're just at their mercy as to what they can give us, and they can move the price up or down just when they're at will.
And obviously the pig industry in Ireland is quite intensive. There's only a small number of main pig producers. Is it 30 plus?
Well, there would be more producers than that, certainly, but there would be around about 40,000 sows in Northern Ireland.
Okay, and would the Northern Ireland pig producer be very efficient, less efficient, or more efficient than the GB pig producer?
Well, a few years ago, there was a report commission called the Cogent Report, and the Cogent Report told us that the Northern Ireland pig producers was in the top, within the top 2 or 3 countries in Europe as regards efficiency. And we have to be there because our feed costs are at least £20 a tonne dearer here, and we are accepting that differential in the feed price because of our efficiency, we believe we can handle that, but the one thing we can't handle is this big differential in price.
Yes, you've led me into the next question, which is why are the pig feed prices 25 a tonne higher here?
Well, maybe we could bring Johnny in on that.
Do you feed them luxury feedstuffs or sugar-coated feedstuffs? What is it?
Ireland isn't a grain-producing country, so majority of grains is brought in, imported, especially the likes of your proteins or soya coming from America. We're very reliant on the commodity markets.
But does that explain why feedstuff here should be higher than it is in TV?
An element of it would go to the extra transport costs of bringing it into the ports here.
Well, last Chairman, what do you think should the department do? So obviously you got quite a dismissive letter, even though the Minister said recently that she sees the entire agricultural industry having a very bright future.
Well, you know, we would like to think the industry has a bright future, and we as pig farmers are all very willing to expand our business. We have an efficient business here, and we are very willing, but we would certainly like someone to come up with some answers, and if we could get the price anywhere near the UK price, we would have a thriving industry here.
As well as that, pig industry here, we've been very proactive industry. Recently we've developed a DNA testing scheme to go along with our Northern Ireland origin label, which essentially means any packet of meat or pork showing the Northern Ireland label, we can, through DNA testing, prove the provenance of that product as an added assurance to the consumers and retailers that what's in the packet is actually there. And also through the Farmers Union and Pig Regen, that is the research side of the pig industry, we have developed, and working with IFA in the Republic, we're developing an all-Ireland health strategy. The health strategy really is to improve the efficiencies of the pork chain further, in terms of, for example, offal defects, health on farms, trying to prevent any diseases coming onto the island. And those two schemes is very proactive. In our view, the farmers themselves, you know, trying to improve their situation. And again, with the health strategy, it has developed quite well. We've been already talking to the Department of Vets, such as Robert Huey, and as well as looking about government funding to implement this scheme, which we think, along with going for growth producer schemes like this year, can add to the value of our industry here. And regardless of extra feed prices, you know, we still can be competitive.
Okay. Thanks. Joanne Dobson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank you for your briefing, Ivor? I was busy writing down all the phrases what you're saying. The price differential between here and the mainland UK has tripled, if I'm right, from 5p from the middle of last year to 15 to 18 pence at the moment per kilo.
Yes.
And I noticed you said potentially will drop further. You did say this is unacceptable, and it is unacceptable. A note you said you've written to Dard and Dairy ministers, and you say you were disappointed by the minister's response.
Yes.
Did you get a response from the Dairy minister as well? And why do you feel they're not fully grasping the situation?
Well, I suppose really I can't speak for the Minister, but I mean, I would have thought that when the differential is so great and we are now in a position where we're losing money and the potential, as you say, this extra 10p to lose a lot more, I thought that maybe a Minister could have had a bit more, looked at it a bit more detail and maybe asked some questions of processors on our behalf why the differential is so great.
Okay, you did say you were disappointed with the response. We've had crises in the beef industry, the dairy industry and now the pig industry. And in your view, based on the comments that you've already given in your presentation, and you've outlined the growing for growth, you said that, you quoted, "We cannot see anything for us from the Going for Growth campaign as it sits at the minute." So do you think going for growth is the best mechanism to lead us to stable, profitable markets, or is it holding back potential recovery? What's your take on that?
Well, I think when the foods, the going for growth strategy was first mooted at the pig industry and indeed beef, I mean, we would see, I mean, we do export. I mean, in Northern Ireland here, I mean, 80% plus of our pig meat and oil goes to mainland, and probably more than that goes to our mainland market, which is the 60 million people plus. And we also have other opportunities to export, you know, to China and to other places, Australia and even America, you know, and we could see that as a good growth potential for us. And if we were on a level playing field, certainly we would play our part as pig farmers. I know beef farmers would do the same.
I suppose I should have declared that because my husband's a big farmer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if we had a level playing field, and I mean, we see that processors have their foot on us and holding us back with these poor prices. And it's particularly disappointing for young farmers coming on, you know, who are our industry's future. And I mean, when we're at below a break-even situation and people talking to us about going for growth, it's not a great incentive for us to expand. So if we could get back even to the prices we were receiving comparative to the English market back in June and July, where the differential, even it was £5 or £6, I would say there would be quite a lot of expansion in the pig business.
Quite right. How do we attract our young farmers? As my son's a young farmer in the industry as well, and they need to see a future, they need to see a profit, and if they're seeing prices dropping and no support, who would be in the industry?
That's
and
right.
I noted all your comments. You said that the trust had gone, and that you mentioned transparency and a joined up approach for going for growth, and you're quite right. It's essential that those are there, and it's worrying to hear you say that you feel they're not. Just finally then, what do you feel the processors and retailers could do to help our farmers to get a fair price for their produce? What would you like to see them do that they're obviously, you feel they're not doing at the minute?
Well, I think the joined up approach is the way forward for us, and I believe where we are producing beef or lamb or pig meat, we as farmers need to be speaking directly with retailers, and we in the union have done that quite successfully recently. Now, I would have to say that processors didn't encourage that. They didn't encourage us to speak to retailers. In fact, weren't that happy that we did that. And I think that we need to do more of that. And if we had this joined up approach, the communication between retailers, processors and farmers hasn't been good in the past.
No.
And even as you would know, with all the problems in the beef, with the residency
yeah.
and everything, we didn't realise, because we weren't speaking directly with the retailers, and we have made an effort to do that, and we've spoken twice now recently to Tesco, and we find that beneficial to us, because we have a direct link in. But, you know, I think if whether we're producing lamb or beef or pig meat, we in Northern Ireland producing to Red Tractor standards, and we should at least be able to avail of the same prices and the same producer prices as our farming colleagues on the mainland. And I know milk producers, for example, if milk producers were in England were receiving 10 pence a litre more than in Northern Ireland, they wouldn't be very happy with that, and that's the position we find ourselves in as pig producers. We're not happy with that.
We have been pushing processors and retailers on behalf of the beef and dairy farmers with limited success. I have to say it is very, very difficult. And beef prices are roughly 20 to 30p per kilo difference between GB and Northern Ireland, despite the crisis starting well over a year ago or more. So, you know, it is so frustrating, both, you know, as a beef farmer myself, but also as a member of the committee. No, just interested in about the great promises of going for growth. You did say quite rightly, Ivor, that we would have a thriving industry if we could get near the UK price.
Yes.
And that's very worrying, because you obviously are not receiving the support for that. And I think it's imperative on us as a committee chair that we do whatever we can to support you, because, you know, I know what's happened with the beef, I know what's happened with the dairy, and then yourselves. And as I say myself, suppose we're not going to encourage our young farmers into the industry. They need a future, and they need a bright future, and they need to see that is going to be sustainable long term. So thank you for your frank and honest presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, Sidney Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Just for some clarification, we have touched on it, that you tell us that the price differential has basically, is it tripled in this last while? And did you mention somewhere, Ivor, in your presentation, that what was the system in place before this all developed, where there seems to be some that was there something really kicked this off to cause this price differential that you cannot now go back to?
Yes.
I'm trying to work out here where you were before and things weren't too bad, to where you are now, and you seem to be in a state where there seems to be little or no movement to getting back to maybe some where profitability is much the same as it was before, whereas it is in GB.
Well, the pricing mechanism for pigs on the mainland in the past was regulated by a body called BPAX, British Pigs Executive. They reported the average pig price for mainland GB on a weekly basis.
And that included you at that time as well?
No.
No, it didn't. Okay.
No, and that brings us to an interesting point. The factories in Northern Ireland don't feed their information into the English system.
Okay.
And when we ask processors why that is, they tell us that it's a good point and they're not sure. But if this system in the UK, it was in the past, it was called DAP, DAPP, which stood for Deadweight Average Pig Price. So in other words, all pig farmers fed into their organisation the price they received every week, and that was calculated and a figure produced every week. There was, and I would have to admit that it was a little bit distorted by pigs that were higher welfare pigs. Most of us produce a standard pig, but there's a smaller percentage of the market where they have straw-bedded pigs, organic pigs, that sort of thing, and they are paid a premium. So processors said, this isn't a fair system. We would like you to take that out of the system. So they did. BPAX came up with a new system called the standard pig price, which is just a pig like what we would produce in Northern Ireland or the bulk of farmers produce in the UK. Concrete slotted systems, the normal pig system that we have in the UK. Now, that dropped the price a penny or two, but not very much. But because the DAP system, we were all related to the original DAP system, producers saw an opportunity to break the link between us and the DAP system. We said that was unfair because it was replaced by another system which was very similar. But they said, no, it wasn't the DAP system, and they broke our link and broke our contracts with the English price.
Did you see alarm bells ringing at that particular stage where maybe this would have that detrimental effect on your pig price here in Northern Ireland?
Well, we complained at the time to the processors that we weren't happy that our commitment to the main UK price was broken. But that fell on deaf ears. They said they were going to create a Northern Ireland price, and we would just have to put up with that. So the price then gradually dropped every day since then.
So really, that was the start of it, and
yes,
it has got worse since then.
Progressively worse.
So at that stage, did you make representation to anyone? Did you really see this coming down the line where you could be where you are today?
I think since the change from the DAP to the SPP price, the external market conditions with the weakening of the euro and the cumulative effect of the Russian bond and the lowering EU price, from that point on, it caused an exaggerating effect on the price. And before Christmas, we did, as the union, release press releases, trying to bring people's attention to the price differential and the need to the factories to rectify it. But since that was maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, there has been no response. And as January is traditionally a bad month for pig marketing, the prices got worse, and the cumulative effect of those different things have probably added to the worsening situation now. And I was just, maybe I'm speaking here, I'd like to just to respond to the point by Joanne. She said about the young farmers coming into the industry, and I suppose I'm still a young farmer by a long margin. It's just when I first read about the Going for Growth, and I said, about creating trust and transparency and this single supply chain, there's that there will be return of equitable value the share of value for all the participants. I think this way the things have gone recently. As a farmer, farmers don't feel they're getting their fair share of the supply chain, and this is what led to this, why we're here today as well. We don't feel as we're getting our fair share. We know market conditions are bad, external market conditions are very bad, but if you were still getting your fair share of the pot, you would work your way through it and let the market conditions rectify themselves in time, as always has happened. But I think I know it's worry for time, but just on point number 4, the export opportunities, as I've already mentioned, that the opening of the China possibility to export to China, that would bring long-term stability to the pig industry and, again, improve our competitiveness with getting extra value for the 5th quarter parts, for example, the offal. Here, farmers will be quite disappointed that the rest of the UK have been approved for China export, and to date we are still waiting on gaining the same approval for our 2 factories here. And I think, as Farmers Union, we would like to call on the committees for support in any way to ensure that we can get approval for China export as soon as possible. With the work done by the Ulster Pork and Bacon Forum and DARD, there has been 2 possible dates in the near future for possible export visits for approval, and that is the week commencing the 23rd of March and week commencing the 13th of April. I'm talking to BPAX, they estimate this could be worth between 6 and 7 pence a kilo to the pig price through getting access to that market, and we see it as vital for long-term stability. So just to make that aware to the committee about the importance of that, of those 2 visits coming up.
Okay. And just quickly, Chair, and I'll finish here. The movement in the exchange rate at the minute, how big an effect has that on the price of per kilo of the price? If you get say a small percentage or 5% movement in exchange rate or something like that, how does that affect you going through to your price?
Well, I think if we take the market in mainland GB, the major retailers have been backing British quality product to a certain extent. They are buying approximately 45 to 48% of their pig meat as British. So we're in Northern Ireland, we're producing the red tractor quality, and we get into that market. So that's still quite a sizable market in the UK when we take the 60 million people. And also the pigs that are produced in mainland Britain and Northern Ireland, we can't supply the market. The market's so big, we're undersupplied. So we believe that there's still a good a market for our pig meat. Now, the other section of the market, the other 50% of the market, or just over 50% of the market, that would be filled with a product from south of Ireland or from Holland or from the continent, and that market would be under pressure. Now, as long as the retailers back what they say, and they have backed that so far, we believe that our part of the market, where it would be under pressure a bit, and that's why the UK price is dropping slightly. Every month it drops a bit, and that's why we said earlier that we believe it could drop a further 10p over the next 2 months. But having said that, our big problem is not the drop in price. We can handle the drop in price on the UK market. It's this price, the differential between here and this UK market. That's our biggest concern.
Finally, is there any chance of getting back in this discussion today? I think where you were would be a nice place to be.
Yes.
Do you think that there is any opportunities, or what could we do to maybe get you back to where that position? It's obviously between this EPAX and this DAP, is it what you call it, where you're raising it? Is that off the scale now? Is that just not happening anymore?
Well, our agreement to get ourselves in Northern Ireland linked to the GB price, there's only 2 processors in Northern Ireland really, and we have been unsuccessful, and that's why we're here today, to try and get your help to try and get us some way linked back to that UK price. If we could get that back, we would be in business. And I just wanted to mention one other point, as you said, Mr. Chairman, earlier. Some of the reasons that processors use. There is one other thing that quite often crops up. One other point, and that is haulage costs between here and mainland. Processors always use that as a justification for a part of the price differential. And one of our pig producers runs a haulage business called Malcolm Keys. He would have 30 trucks on the road, and he does quite a lot of haulage, and he's in discussion with hauliers all the time, and I got him to give us a price for pig meat from here to the UK. And to Birmingham, a 22-tonne load of boxed pork would cost £725. To Manchester, would be £100 more. And that would be, on average, about 3.5 pence. But there is one point that processors never mention to us, and that is they have a haulage cost on a similar basis on the UK. And that would vary whether they're bringing product from a factory in Scotland down to the mainland, or whether from the south of England up to the Midlands. And Malcolm Keys got an average price for the same service across the water, which is £400 a load. And when you deduct one from the other, the haulage cost is less than 2 pence. So if we had the haulage down to 2 pence, we wouldn't worry about that differential.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ciaran McCarthy, you want to?
Yeah, Chair, I'm just reading your press release, and there's a sentence there. Many pig producers believe that an opportunistic approach is being taken to reduce producer prices below current market value returns. Could you tell us who has taken that opportunistic approach, and is there anything that this committee could do to get on top of that, to alleviate the problems that you're telling us? Who's behind it?
Well, we in Northern Ireland, we sell our pigs really to two main factories. Carrow in Cookstown and Dunbia at Cullybacky. And they handle the bulk of the pigs in Northern Ireland. There's one other plant at Derry, John Grant's, but they're relatively small. So, we're at the mercy of two processors, and they are the people who dictate the prices here in Northern Ireland. And we have, that's outside our control. When they tell us whatever the price is, we have to accept that at the moment.
Right. And is there anything that we as a committee could do to rectify that?
Well, yes. I would hope that after our presentation today, if you could ask the same questions as we are asking on our behalf, and ask them how they justify this price differential. That's about the best that we can hope for today. So we would like you, and Mr. Chairman, that's one of the reasons we would like you to take up our challenge for us.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Oliver McMullen.
Yes, Chair, thank you, and nice to talk to you again. It seems to me this problem was there the last time I was talking to you down in Cookstown, wasn't it?
Yes.
And we had the same problem there. Nearly the same problem there about transport, about cost of feed, etc., and processors and that.
Well, through the chair again, I think at that stage it was a slightly different problem, in that at that time the differential was nowhere near what it is today. Right. But at that time we had a particular problem, and that was a hike in the price of soybean meal, which was well over £400 a tonne, maybe £450 a tonne at that time. And it was we were losing money at that stage. We were losing money at that stage, and so were the people across the water as well on mainland. And the difference in the price between here and there was probably the 68p at the time. So it's a slightly different problem. It was a feed-related problem at that time, and this is not a feed-related problem. This is a market problem.
And I know then there were some of the processors were actually importing their own pigs in. I think it was 70% was mentioned, I think, or something, that of the pigs that they dealt with their own pigs coming off their own supply line. Is that still carrying on?
Well, no, in Northern Ireland here at the moment, processors wouldn't own any pigs. They would import pigs, certainly. One factory, Cookstown factory, would import pigs from Southern Ireland. Probably half of their kill would come from Southern Ireland. And we as pig farmers in Northern Ireland, we're quite happy with that situation, because it keeps the factory full and keeps their overheads down, so we don't see that as a disadvantage.
And there's none of them supplying taking their own pigs off their own farm, say in Europe, and bringing them in here?
No, I don't think there's any evidence of that,
No, right, okay. Thank you.
Okay, Edmund Pooch.
Thank you. Any differential between the price in the north and the south?
But yes, there's a differential between Southern Irish pigs don't qualify for our red tractor standard to go into the GB market, and the price of pigs on the continent would be similar to the price of pigs in the south of Ireland. They would be cheaper than ours.
They'd be cheaper than ours.
Yes.
And in terms of, where the factories, the two factories in Northern Ireland, what they sell as compared to the factories in England, is there a considerable difference? Because you go to the dairy sector, and Northern Ireland's heavily based upon milk powder.
Yes.
So when you get to global marketing, because we're on a global market, that has an impact compared to England, where it's, majority of it's probably raw milk and so forth. Is there a difference in what the product is that is being sold? Is there greater levels of processing in Northern Ireland, for example, than there is in the rest of GB, or is it largely similar?
No, it's largely similar. It's unlike the milk situation.
Yeah.
The UK market, with over 60 million people, they're undersupplied with pig meat. We are, as you know, part of the UK. We're on the same red tractor assurance, quality assurance scheme, and there's absolutely no difference. The kill spec, everything's the same. And in fact, one group in Northern Ireland sell a load of pigs direct into England every week, and we get the English price. The pigs are the same, good enough quality, everything's the same, So it's different. I understand the implications of the milk market, but it's certainly different. Our pigs can go into the major retailers, which handle 80% of our pigs.
Okay. I don't want to put words in your mouth or force you to say something you don't want to, so feel free to answer this how you like. Is it essentially down to two processors absorbing a greater degree of profit than English processors?
Well, I can't say how profitable our processors are, but that's why we're asking the question, why is this difference? And we would like them to itemise why we are so different now than we were in June last year, and we can't get answers to that.
No. It strikes me that in terms of the product that's ending up on the shelf, it's not been sold for a lesser price in Tesco's or Sainsbury's in England.
Well, one thing I can say is that a major processor from England contacted me some time ago through the Farmers Union here, complaining about the cheap prices of red tractor pig meat coming over onto the UK market. Okay. Now, if you take a major processor in England who's quoting, who's paying 12 or 14 pounds more for pigs in England, that processor has no access to pigs from Northern Ireland, and if he wants cheaper pigs, that processor, he can buy pigs from the continent, but they're not red tractor quality assurance, so he's limited to where he can go with them. Now, if that processor is tendering for, say, Lidl's business in London or somewhere, he has to compete with cheaper pig meat coming in from Northern Ireland, which is of the same standard, and they find that very unsatisfactory. And BPACs find that unsatisfactory as well, that we have cheaper pig meat in Northern Ireland that's of the same standard.
Okay, so they're not necessarily taking the margin. They could be selling it at a slightly lower price than the English processor?
Well, they could be taking a bit less, but I would imagine that if they're buying pigs at £12 a pig less, they wouldn't be giving it all away in the marketplace.
I suspect not.
Okay. Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for your presentation. At this stage here, I don't want to ask any questions, I had a few questions there, but they've basically covered, right, but you talked about 40,000 sows, nowadays, right, but how many, say, 2 or 3 years ago were they producing? But for by all that there, right, I think there has been a very worthwhile presentation that you did today, and it's a worthwhile exercise coming along today to express the views that you've expressed, especially around the going for growth, and for to ask this committee here for support and asking the questions that you have asked and have fallen on deaf ears. Saying by us asking the questions, it'll maybe produce any better results, right? But from my point of view, and I'm sure from the comments that I've heard all around the table, we will do everything that we can to support you. I just want to call back onto the point you made about the answer that the Minister made. It's about that she cannot intervene, but she can't intervene with the markets, right? As far as I'm aware, right, you know? And is that not what she's just saying within your letter, you know? She's not saying that she won't intervene there because she doesn't want to support you.
Well, I can
There's a difference there, like.
Well, I can understand that she can't intervene with market forces. I can understand that. But we see our market in the UK at 140 pence a kilogram. We see the Northern Ireland market, which is created by the two processors, at 125 pence. So from that point of view, I find that it's not satisfactory reply. And I think that she could ask some questions on that.
I can say there that I certainly will bring this to her attention, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you very much. And just to share the sow numbers with you, in the late 90s there was a fire at a pig plant up in the north of the country, and a lot of farmers, the pig price collapsed and a lot of farmers went out of business. At that time we had 70 to 75,000 sows in Northern Ireland, and that fell to 35,000 fairly quickly. So going for growth would be certainly something that's well within the pig farmers' capability in Northern Ireland, and we've moved the sow numbers up slightly, but there's no reason why we couldn't double sow numbers in Northern Ireland if we got a level playing field and were given an opportunity to do so.
Well, fair enough, and thanks very much, and that's it, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. I just noticed one of the recommendations in going for growth, processors must provide incentives to producers who participate in benchmarking. That's not happening, is it?
Yes, indeed. Pig farmers in Northern Ireland are always very keen to, I would say, apart from the poultry industry, we would be very good at, we all have our own computerised systems. The number of pig farmers who benchmark through the department has been rising every year, and I believe that 55% of our farmers in Northern Ireland are now taking part in the CAFRE benchmarking system. And the other ones who aren't are certainly well equipped with computerised systems and are fully up to speed with their costs as well.
Okay. Two main processors. Dumbia, they're Cookstown, are they? Yeah.
No. Ullabacker.
Okay. Sorry, someone else? Declan? Okay, sorry.
Just thanks, I'm sorry I've been late and daddy question time there. But I think quite right, we will add our voice, what we can do as a committee, and indeed to the Minister as well. I think that's important. And I think when I recall back, Chair, whenever we were discussing the creation of the groceries adjudicator, we were disappointed at the fact that they don't cover processors. Yes. But nevertheless, it may be relevant for the committee to correspond with them in relation to this matter. But that does seem to be very unfair.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
Is there, just was thinking there now as well, is there a pending trip across to London at some stage? Or?
The committee discussed it last week because they thought they wanted to do it in May, but then when I went away and looked, we remembered that May was a general election. Oh. And because the committee also wanted to speak not just to the grocery code adjudicator but to the sponsoring minister, and obviously there may not be a sponsoring minister, so the committee decided to defer it till September.
Okay.
Okay, is that all the questions? Listen, can I thank you very much for coming along, for giving us the detailed presentation, and we understand fully where you are, and we as a committee will decide after you leave what we will do. I propose that we'll probably write to the processors and to the Minister, but certainly we have every sympathy for your case, and we'll do what we can to try and highlight the situation.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you and your committee for giving us the time that you have done. And we would ask you to do what you can to help us in our problems. And I'm very happy, and the rest of us are very happy to furnish you with any other prices or queries or questions you have. We'll be glad to do what we can to help you. Thank you.
Yes, the clerk can contact you with any more information that she feels we need. Okay.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Sorry?
You know, just to say there as well as that, I think the committee there should put out a public statement in support of the people here today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, before we leave this particular subject, does any members do feel I think we should write to the processors and look at an explanation as to why the wide gap in prices between the mainland and Northern Ireland?
Yeah, I think
Is that in order?
Yep.
Okay. Is anyone else who wants to write to?
maybe Josh should copy the letter to the Minister and
Yes.
ask for her good offices to maybe also to have some discussions with the processor as well.
Okay.
I think we should.
I think the fact we have two processors, main processors in Northern Ireland, which they have the ability to dictate the price, and that's the difficulty I think that the producers have.
What about the BPACs people? I note here that they intend to meet with them, but can we as a committee correspond with them?
Yeah, you know, there we go. I don't know if they're looking. Yep, no problem.
No, the question I was asking was they seem to have lost ground here. It seemed to come in with maybe unexpectedly to them, you know.
The difficulty is, and I think Edwin asked the question, they're bringing in cheaper pigs from the Republic of Ireland, and that's not helping, you see, so that's keeping our prices down too, and that's the problem.
They're
And
not
the
red
Bureau
tractor, are they?
Pardon?
But they're not red.
Probably not, that's right, but there could be quite a differential, that's why. It doesn't help, if you understand, it doesn't help.
Chair, if the processors are complaining about the pigs coming over from here to England are cheaper, buying for cheaper products, as they said, is there any sort of row going on in England? The pigs
No,
are brought over?
Yeah.
England imports a lot of pork and meat, pork meat, a lot. And the European pork market is weak, so they're importing cheap pig meat from Europe, which isn't helping across the board. I mean, he did tell us there that there are signs that even the English market could weaken even further by 10 pence, so this may not be over.
But you were at the last meeting we had down in Cookstown and Dungannon.
Yeah.
And you can remember the things that we were told then, that there was pigs being imported in from Europe into the plants. You know,
I'm not so sure there's pigs been imported into Northern Ireland plants from Europe. I would have thought they have a lot of pigs coming out of the Republic. I couldn't see them bringing live pigs in from Europe to Northern
Go back into
Ireland.
the records, you'll find out that was...
Well, what was happening?
Anyway, that's beside the point.
Yes, yes.
We're back to the same problem with then.
You're probably right. I'm sorry.
No.
Danny, there are a number of firms bringing in, yes.
I didn't mention any names.
You didn't mention names, but there are those that don't kill pigs in Northern Ireland at all.
No,
That's
and I
right.
think these gentlemen are back to nearly the same problem as there was then as they are now. And I certainly would agree with Ian here that it's maybe a public statement from this committee supporting the big industry. Because we supported the beef and the milk and the sheep. You know. Yeah.
Okay.
Also write to the Coastal Code Adjudicator and a press statement. Are you happy? I can either bring the press statement back next week for you to sign off, or I can try and get that done by written correspondence between you next week.
As soon as
The
possible.
sooner you get it out, the better.
Yeah, the sooner the better.
Yeah.
Do it by written correspondence then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll do it by email in other words.
Everyone happy then before we move on? Okay. Agenda item 7, committee decision on TRIPSI draft motion. Can I refer members to the amended TRIPSI position paper at pages 59 to 77. Members will recall that this was discussed at last week's meeting and all paragraphs, with the exception of 2, were agreed. The amendments can now be found at paragraphs 70 and page 77. Those 2 changes, is that right?
That's,
Okay.
one was agreed in the committee and one was agreed that I would bring it back to the committee today. That's paragraph 70 and page 77
Yes, the
was the
last
one
one there.
was agreed to be agreed today.
Everyone happy with that? Just take a wee quick look, please. Okay.
Yep.
And then can I refer members to the draft motion at page 78, which is the next page, yeah. Members content with the wording of that motion? Just have we look at it there.
Seems okay, John.
Okay? Any problems on it before? Okay. I advise members that the motion will be laid in the business office for scheduling with the business committee on the 17th of February 2015. This would mean the debate would most likely be on Monday, the 2nd of March 2015.
Did there be any reference in there on the Rural White Paper?
Yes, the Rural White Paper is mentioned in there, in the committee position paper.
I should have been mentioned in the motion. Committee for Agriculture and Social Development position paper on the review of the typical framework as...
The problem was that the committee didn't look at in great depth at the Rural White Paper in its review.
But it's signed up to it.
So you don't have
We've
the...
all signed up to it. Every department has signed up to it.
Yeah.
And I think it should be, maybe should be in there.
Okay. Everybody happy that we added in Rural White Paper?
Chair, I certainly have no difficulty with it being in, but I'm not so sure the part it plays actually in this debate and the report, that's all. Like I fully support the issue around the white paper, no difficulty with that at all. I'm just not so sure.
The wording of the motion is wide enough that you'll be able to mention it in the debate.
Without putting it in word, yeah, without wording it in.
But we can add it in.
Members?
I'll go with the majority, but...
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is it wrong?
In a right.
Probably just mention it. Probably better just to mention it.
Right, okay. Okay, it's going to be in. You've got your way.
No, in their speeches, I meant.
No, will he?
I think you're better to mention it in your speech as opposed to putting it in the...
Okay, that's different now, Mick. That's all right.
Haven't got your way.
Right, what do you
All right. Get easy.
Just leave it the way it is. Yeah, everyone can speak.
Okay.
Leave it there.
Agenda item 8, written brief public consultation on rural proofing bill. To refer members to the paper from the department at page 80 to 145. Members will recall that the committee received a briefing from officials on the rural proofing bill at the meeting on the 20th of January 2015. And as at this time, the committee was content that the consultation issues and requested that the department returns to the committee with an analysis of the responses. The departmental papers provide a copy of the consultation, which launched last week and will run for 6 weeks, with a closing date of the 16th of March 2015. Although the consultation period is short, in order to secure the passage of the bill in this mandate, the department intends to hold a series of public meetings to maximise engagement. These meetings are detailed at page 82 of the meeting pack. Can you seek comments from members? No comments? Okay. Agenda item 9, SR 2015-16, the less favoured area compensatory alliance regulations, Northern Ireland 2015.
So just in the last one, the only comment I'd make is that I doesn't think any rural places exist east of Belfast or north of Flambridge.
So yeah, there's just one in Belfast.
There we go.
And yeah. Do you want me to respond to them that they maybe should look at another venue?
Well, there's a very big rural community in Strangford and Down Council area, and even in my constituency there's a considerable rural area.
Chair,
why they're having it in Belfast beyond me?
You're right. Sure.
I know. I've got on Newton Arge or Downpatrick or somewhere in Belfast.
Chair.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
And look at that as well. That whole North Antrim area, right into the Glens, Ballymena, that whole area there, is out of it too.
Ballymena.
Okay.
You know, you have it up in the Greenmount, that's fine, but like you're taking the whole countryside to one area instead of coming into the countryside.
Okay.
It should be held in one centre point in the countryside to fit the whole area.
We've run from Ballycastle to Greenmount.
Yeah.
Okay, clear before we move on. Okay. Again, I'll just go over this, maybe, because it made a few confused. Stopping halfway through it. Agenda item 9, SR 2015-16, the less favoured area compensatory alliance regulations, Northern Ireland 2015. I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 146 and 148, and papers from the department at 149 to 164. Can advise members that the regulations last came before the committee on the 20th of January and the 27th of January 2015, when an issue was highlighted. The response to this issue is contained at page 160 of the meeting pack. Can I seek comments from members before I put the question? Okay. If content, I want to put the question to members of the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SR 2015-16, the Less Favoured Area Compensation Alliances Regulations, NI 2015, and subject to comment from the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objections to the rule. Okay.
Agreed, yeah.
Under agenda item 10, SR 2015-17, the Transitional Payment to Disadvantaged Areas Scheme, Northern Ireland 2015. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 165 to 167 and papers from the department at pages 168 to 177. Can advise members that the regulations last came before the committee on 20th of January 2015, at which stage no issues were raised. Can I seek comments from members again? And are you content for me to put the question? Okay. The Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SR 2015-17, the Transitional Payment to Disadvantaged Areas Scheme, Northern Ireland 2015, and subject to comment from the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objections to the rule. Okay. Agenda item 11, SR 2014/307, the Night Rejection Programme Regulations, Northern Ireland 2014. Can refer members to the memo from the clerk at page 178 to 181 and papers from the department at pages 182 to 226. Can I advise members that the regulations last came before the committee on the 9th of December 2014 and no issues were identified at that time. The SR is jointly made by DARD and DOE, and whilst the Examiner of Statutory Rules states the regulations breach the 21-day rule, the explanation given by the department is reasonable. The Committee for the Environment considered and agreed the SR at its meeting on the 29th of January 2015. Can I seek members' comments again?
What's the measure regarding the sloping land?
I'm not so sure. The exact details of that.
What degree of slope are we talking about? Because
I can find out for
as a
you.
representative of County Down, we have quite a lot of drumming.
Quite a lot of slopey land.
Yeah.
I think that's one that'll be. That's coming from Europe, maybe too, is it? Part of that?
Yes, that is coming from Europe.
Yeah.
People who have probably.
I think from memory, and I didn't go back over the Hansard, you did ask him that question when they were up, but I can't remember.
No.
Can't remember the exact answer you've had.
I'm going home by anyway.
You having to put the question then or not?
Even if you have to go back tomorrow.
Time's not on our side.
Yeah, okay. Right. I put the question that the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development has considered SRT 13-307, the Night Rejection Programme Regulations, Northern Ireland 2014, has no objections to the rule. Right. Yep. Great. And item 12, correspondence. Can refer members to the correspondence received at pages 228 to 255. Members will have received an email on Friday informing them of these two items that they may have proved useful during the budget debate yesterday. Members consent to action correspondence as suggested on the index sheet at page 228. Right. Then item 13, forward work programme. Can I refer members to the draft forward work programme at 256 to 260? Can I advise members that the written update on brucellosis eradication schedule for 17th of February has now been deferred the request of the department to the 3rd of March 2015. Can I draw members' attention to the meeting on the 24th of February, during which an effective questioning techniques session will be taking place. This session has been planned since September 2014, so can I ask each member to make every effort to be present during this part of the meeting. Can I seek agreement again for the forward work programme? Okay. And item 14, any other business? Is there any other business? Is that Oliver? Yes? No. 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 I thought your hand was going up there. No other business will be on.
Further update, Mr. Chairman, on milk prices, and understand the Frontera and was a marked rise, and what implications will that have? I assume there's some positive implications.
I think it will take some time to. I still think it will take some time for it to. Hopefully it will. Yeah, absolutely, it's the right direction.
I can write and ask you if you clarify.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do. Albino?
Yep.
Agenda item 15, date and time of the next meeting. The next meeting of the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development will take place on Tuesday, 17th of February 2015 at 1:30 p.m. in room 30. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And there doesn't seem to have any division.